Hello, I'm Dennis Horvitz and you're watching Brass Tacks. Brass Tacks is a show about stuff. Anything, really. It is produced by Fred Brass. And our guest today is no stranger to Manhattan Neighborhood Network, unless you've been hiding under a rock somewhere. You probably, if you're a regular watcher, viewer of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, then this man almost needs no introduction. Harold Channer is the host of Conversations with Harold Channer, and he's been around forever. It's been my personal pleasure to have been a guest on his show a couple of times, and now I've got him in my clutches. So, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's great to see. Great to see you, Dennis. You're doing a great job with the Brass Tacks.
Well, well, coming from you, that is really a compliment.
No, it's really good.
You've been around for forever almost. And we're going to try to cover a number of subjects.
Yes.
But before we do that,
sure.
Again, for anyone who hasn't been a regular viewer or is watching for the first time, I'd just like to get a little background on you. Where were you born? Where are you from?
Yeah, I was born in Detroit, March 14th, 1935, so I'm 76, and feeling every year of it, and have been interested in things in a comprehensive way for a good deal, practically most of my adult life. I've been heavily influenced. I became a university professor back in the 60s, taught at about 7 different universities, and then became very interested through my interest in James Joyce and particularly Marshall McLuhan. He was the oracle of the electronic age in terms of communications, and also then my leading person who's inspired me was a person that would be aware, they'd be aware of. R. Buckminster Fuller was my main inspiration. I really have tried hard to investigate on a wide template the intellectual history of the planet, and I can't find any particular person that's would have it more, as the kids tend to say, together than Buckminster Fuller in terms of understanding things comprehensively.
Well, yeah, and I'm hoping we'll get into that a little later. And where did you get your education from?
Well, nowhere very impressive. Well, I'm more involved with the. I took a bachelor's and master's at Wayne University in Detroit. I was born and raised in Detroit, and then I took the doctorate work in University of Indiana Bloomington. But I really think, I put a thing aside because it developed quickly with me. I really think the main thing in terms of outside of getting some certificate that can be useful to you in terms of credentialing you to be, able to fit into institutions, the main thing, I think, is what is called autodidact.
Yes.
My family was autodidactic. That means that
I am too, but I'm never do it in public.
No, but I mean people that are just interested in things on their own without for whatever it's worth, I don't like to corrupt the youth or anything like that. Oh, Socrates was charged with that. But I never liked school. And I know I had to be drafted. I'm older, and they had the draft at the time of career. I had to go in the Army, and I didn't fit in very well into the Army because it's very outer-directed authoritarian.
Oh, yeah.
And I have almost an pathological antipathy to authoritarianism.
Having watched you before, I've kind of picked up on that.
Yeah, and that's bad because most all of our, if you think about it in some way, practically all of our institutional assumptions of our institutions are authoritarian. It's a little less severe in some cases and so forth. But in the military, I used to try and explain as an enlisted man to the sergeants that we could do things democratically. And so like Private Hargrove or Forrest Gump, they would say, we don't want to hear that. But anyway.
So you didn't really fit in?
Well, I did and I didn't. And the one thing I've been able to fall back on is humor. I think if you couldn't be humorous and seeing things in humorous things, thank God for the comedians and the humor it's a great way to handle arrogance and things that come into your world. If you take it as a movie set, like the central casting has sent a guy over, his role is to be a schmuck. And so if you take it into that step removed,
that's my role on this show, as a matter of fact. So
anyway, but although the point being in education, I think the most important thing is that somebody who's really, really interested in something, rather than filling the requirements of prerequisite on prerequisite, and it's usually only to get a certificate so that you can get some money, or to get a position in the society that will get you material benefit. And it's
basically, I like to say that most of what I know is by accident.
Well, that's true.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of stuff I know today that I never dreamed that I would have any reason to know at all.
Yeah.
It's just, but I think as you start to pursue things, everything is kind of seems to be interconnected. So it always winds up some, you know, you never know where you're gonna wind up.
I agree with you. I love the idea of Gaia, you know, where there's a lovelock and they see that the Earth itself in its evolution is like an organism. Right. And everything's connected to everything else. And I agree with you. I think everything is, I think it's almost axiomatic.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly on a not that I'm trying to pass myself off as any kind of expert. Certainly on a quantum level, everything is connected. But I think in terms of just you start going down one path, and generally it branches off into lots of different areas.
Could I share something
Sure,
with you in the audience? With one of our good buddies here. My buddy, he's been here forever, is Joe Friendly. Joe Friendly is he's an absolute certified angel. A beautiful guy. He's been here came from Chicago, and he's comprehensive. And he was on Paula Gloria. She's another one of our producers here, and he was doing a sort of monologue with that, and he was talking about how he's interested in everything. See, I'm interested in everything, and the relationship between them. And he was talking about he was going to get his name changed or something, and so he was talking with the fellow. He says, "My name is Joe Friendly," and he said, and the guy said, "And I'm interested in everything." He was trying to make the point that everything is connected. I mean, we tend to break things down into specializations or parts in order to get a handle on it. But he said he's connected in everything, and so he said to the guy who was taking the papers down and everything, he said, and the guy said, "Well, you can't be interested in everything, you know." He said, "I know, I'll just change my name." And he said it was really funny, because what he was trying to get at is he's got a systems understanding, or a comprehensive understanding. And he said, "I'm going to change my name to Joseph W. Friendly." He said it on the air yesterday, and he said, "It's going to be Joseph whatever Friendly." So he's just expressing the desire to be in touch with pattern recognition, I would submit, in terms of consciousness.
Let me just kind of go back to just a little bit to your background. How did you wind up in New York?
How did I wind up in New York? I'd been thrown out of the university in California, where I'd been before that, because along with 48 other, that was in 1968 when Mr. Reagan was in Sacramento, and I could go into the details of that, but we effectively, it was a big, it was part of the University of California at Long Beach in the Los Angeles area, and we, through, I could go into, they could tell a story, but I don't want to go into the story in depth and everything. But I had already assumed a position as a professor when I was there. By then, 1 year out of graduate school, I was a normal professor. You give a grade and you give facts, and people give you tests and you regrade them and everything. But I had never graded. I got to be where when people would come in the class, I would give everybody on the first day an A. And I would say, as far as I'm concerned, you're all A's. And to get rid of authority, because it seems to me the educational process is mostly using the societal organization to get people used to being responded to an authority figure, teachers and so forth. And I wanted to get rid of any authority, and I said I would I would give everybody an A, and I'd be there every day. If they wanted to come, we could do something. And just left it at that. So the people who were very anxious to get an A, good grade paid average, so they could get into Harvard business or whatever they wanted to do, got their A, and they would go off and everything. But you see, it's very subversive. And then I proposed that they ought to have all university or educational things be done in that way, but the classroom got filled with the smartest people on campus who also were very revolutionary then, and they folded over into our house. And essentially what it is, we had closed the university down. At the time, it was Vietnam, and it had to do with an art thing, and we actually had to jump over barricades with the police and storm the administration building. We shut the university down against the will of Mr. Reagan, who was the governor.
Right.
And so I was put in jail with the students, and had been, I didn't fit, I guess, into the system. And so some friends there had been aware. The day my son was born, I was in jail. My mother, saintly mother, had come out to visit with my wife at the time, and I was in jail, me and 43 students, for having closed down University of California.
And what was the result of that? I mean, what?
Well, what the result is, I'd lost the job. Well, I'd lost the job about 3 weeks after I'd arrived, because my office became filled with all the bête noirs, all the troublemakers. And there were a lot of troublemakers then. And the smartest people on the campus just came.
And I would say that probably throwing a monkey wrench into the marking system was probably not.
No, you can't have that. That's like taking away wages, or that's like taking away all the incentives that motivate human behavior and so forth. And I think it's a thing. It's the educational. But the thing is, all of our institutions are authoritarian. Essentially, there are very few that can give, like in a libertarian sense, the assumption of the ability of a society where people are not necessarily reacting to outer authority. And that's a problem that we may be coming to an end of, possibly, in terms of the evolution of broader events.
Before we get into that, so after you lost your job in California,
I got another one.
In California?
No, I got the job. That's where I got the job from a lot of friends out there. You get networks when you're in that kind of a situation. And networks, and there was a college, and it was run by a Marxist. Well, he was a Frankfurt school, but anyway, at New Paltz, New York, which is a sister community to Woodstock, upstate. And so we went there, and we were there from '68 to '71 as a professor, doing the same thing, and I was tolerated. But that was that magic time.
Yes.
That period of time, which I would think it would be good for one and all to think about as being a kind of year one kind of thing around the year 1970. There were things going on in universe and in the broader pattern that I think in the fullness of time it's likely to be that time will be measured, that is, if we don't blow it all up, which I'm very worried about, seriously.
Right. Well,
year one will be about the year 1970. There were things going on then, and that's where I was then in New York. At Woodstock Festival.
What I'm trying to do is, what I'm really leading up to immediately is, what about your involvement with MNN, with public access cable?
Well, MNN is part of public access.
Right, and so what got you involved in public access?
Well, public access, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe in public access. Right. I think it's really mostly because of the way it's funded.
Right, but
it makes it. Yeah.
I just kind of like trying to just draw a kind of a linear. In other words, what got you from New Paltz to having your own show on Manhattan?
Well, Manhattan Network was rather late compared to that. We had one of the we did it up in New Paltz. We had a cable channel,
right.
And cable was coming, and cable was offering multi-channel capacity of communications, extended consciousness. It's coming full tilt boogie now with all the cyber things and everything, but it was coming. And we had a thing there, a head end at the top of the mountain in the little college town, and we could bring it down, and we had a little, at that head end, we had a camera, and we set up public access. It must have been around 1969, 70.
Oh, sure. That was
and we had people coming up, Allen Ginsberg and Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman and all these kind of people that were in a revolutionary mood at that time would come up to this little head end on the mountain, and it would be carried as a local channel, public access channel there. I don't even think they had public access in New York. Maybe city. and it developed later.
It's funny because, you know, when you and I were talking before the show, I told you that I was born in Oil City, Pennsylvania. And because of which is near Titusville, and it's right within the Allegheny Mountains. And of course, in those days, broadcast TV went out over the air via antenna, and the only way that we could get a television signal at all, being nestled in the mountains, was if through cable. So my first experience with television, watching TV, was with cable. But I don't think back in the early 50s, I don't think they had anything like public access in those days. At least I wouldn't have known. No,
I don't think so. No, that was kinescope time. And I'm old enough to remember, we had friends after the Second War who had bought a television set in anticipation. There was no programming at all. The television was sitting there in the corner, Dennis. The television was sitting, and there was a test pattern with an Indian head. That's all there was. And then finally came Kukla, Fran, and Ali. And I mean, that's going way the hell back.
But I remember the test. I remember the test pattern with the Indian head. I absolutely do, and I remember Kukla, Fran, and Ali.
And Howdy Doody. Howdy Doody, and all that kind of stuff. And I Love Mama. It was a good series. The Goldbergs.
It was
anyway, Dennis,
Dean Martin.
We're dating ourselves, aren't we? Maybe we shouldn't do that.
I don't know.
But anyway, so that was it. It's going exponential. It's going really fast, and communications is a big issue. But we had it there. MNN's, I guess, about 15, 20 years old now. That's relatively new. Compared to there were public access efforts here. George Stoney is a wonderful man, a tremendous filmmaker, just a beautiful guy. George Stoney, he's been a founding member of the board and everything here and everything. A great guy. He's a real hero, a really good filmmaker. Documentary films back in the 30s, 40s, and so forth with film.
Now, public access came to New York City, in about 1970 or so?
I'm a little bit shaky. I'm not sure. Public access came, I think it did. I think everything goes back to about 1970 in my thinking. And it was around then that they got the cable industry agreed. They could see they were going to make a lot of money. I mean, and they were going to bring a thing into the home to bring a cable that could be metered and billed and turned off. You didn't pay. It was a license to print money, Lord Beaverbrook said. And but they agreed.
He was a big fan of cable TV.
Yeah, who, Beaverbrook?
Yeah.
Hey, he might have been. You know, they have that thing, the Open University in Britain. That's really good. But it was developing here. But there were people, and so the cable industry agreed I think it was about 1970 or so. I think it's fair to say they agreed, rather than retaining all earnings of this fledgling industry that was building, Time Warner and that kind of thing, and others, teleprompter, and they set aside 5% of their net of tax earnings to support what is called PEG. Public, educational, and governmental. That was partly a reaction to the zeitgeist. There was a lot of tension in the air, input from NGOs and that kind of stuff, civil society as opposed to private sector.
I know that your view on this is somewhat more benign than mine as far as the motivation behind it.
Well, there was a lot of, the revolution or change was in the air in 1970.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but my contention is that when you have, major corporations, and I certainly, no one would ever mistake me for any kind of left-wing radical, but basically the 1%ers of revenue that they're getting, they basically had to pry it out of them.
Well, I don't know.
And would be with
no, I don't think that's quite true.
Think that's true.
No, not in my experience. I don't know. Maybe, and there was some of that. That always takes place in any kind of a thing. But I think that it was an understanding, and there were a lot of people. I know for a fact, having done programs and interrelated with them and so forth, that there are a lot of people within the cable industry who were very hopeful and very favorably inclined toward public access because they had the capacity. I know Ted Turner loves public access.
Right.
I know Brian Lamb, who finally got C-SPAN going, which is the crown jewel of the whole cable industry by people all the way from visionaries to bean counters. And I don't think it's true to say we have a tendency on the part of people who are talking about alternative media to think that there's an evil system in place. We have to attack it, and we have to do it in a dialectic way.
Well,
they're the good guys and bad guys, and it still maintains. And you can gin up a lot of energy and everything by doing that. I think it's better if we can keep into a context where we see we're all in this thing together. Everybody's involved, and then not necessarily seeing it in the narrow context of political dialectic that a lot of people can gin up energy in themselves and the society.
I'm not taking a position in opposition to that, but I pretty much, you know, based on what I've heard and
Yeah.
things, you know, that I've read, but I will, you know, I would certainly be willing to consider, you know, like I said, I'm not in absolute opposition to that.
Well, that's just my thinking,
Yeah,
and
okay.
my experience. I know Ted Turner, and there are people, a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are thinking, you know, it's a big issue of communication.
So, in any case,
but that's how I did, and then I got here, and then I was here doing it
Okay.
before there were. They used to have a studio up on 125. Way back,
Yes.
teleprompter. I had a guy come from the White House.
I remember that.
Yeah, I used to go up there, and a guy came from the White House when they were impeaching Nixon, Rabbi Brook or something.
Oh,
he was
yes.
a supporter.
Rabbi Korf.
Korf, that's right. And he
Korf.
came up there, and also Hershenson came
Okay.
from the White House to
Right.
do programs on 125 back in 1973 or something.
that I don't-
So that
that
was
I don't
before there was the kind of thing that led to MNN. I think, you know,
right.
George Stoney and there were pioneers
So
of it.
I'm going to want to get myself
Yeah.
fired because we're actually supposed to get involved, discuss.
The trouble is,
the labor theory of value.
trouble is, things are too damned interesting. All those rabbit holes you could go on for years talking about.
And I'm perfectly willing to do that, but before I move on to the labor theory of value,
Yeah, that's a big
as proposed by John Locke.
natural law.
I just want to just focus on that, just to get you to talk about when actually you got involved in public access.
Well, very early, we were involved in public access in New Paltz. I got the use of about the 6th or 7th, what they called Porto Pack. It was a unit coming from Japan, everything did. Now it's all China, but Japan. And it was a thing where you had a thing you could go out reel to reel, 20-minute, black and white, connect a camera, and you could make television.
Yes.
An individual could never make television. You had
Before
8mm film,
Right,
you had to
right.
send it off and all that.
So that was when television equipment was starting to become smaller and miniaturized, so that you could,
Well, yes, that's true, and also available to the individual.
To the individual.
It was always, the big machines were always available only
When
to
did-
institutions.
When
you know.
did Conversations with Harold Channer begin?
Began about, I'm not sure exactly the date. I'd have to get it would have been probably around 69 or 70 that we
That
actually
long.
started. We called it Conversations from the beginning.
And it was on MNN?
No, there was no
There was
MNN.
and so that started in New Paltz, or that started.
No,
in New
the
York.
Conversations. Yeah, we had a program that we aired, and like I say, we had a little shack that housed the equipment for the local town of New Paltz, a
Right.
college town.
But
And we used to go up there through the snow, and it was just, you know, it was just half the size of this with the equipment, and then a couple
And so
milk
we-
carts you could sit on. Your wall you could put a projection on, and it had a deck, and we played it. And we got all kinds. Jonas Mekas and Ave Hoffman, Ray Bremza, a lot of the people that were involved with the Vietnam thing and all of that would come up there all the way from New York and go up in that little place up on the mountain. And we were doing it before it was happening in New York, I think. I'm not sure.
Right. Do you remember what your first show was for Manhattan Neighborhood
First,
Network?
I know, Manhattan Neighborhood is rather recent in my experience. I mean, relatively. I can't remember the first show for Manhattan. I can remember, I think the first show I did it with, I'd had trouble at the university because I didn't grade anybody except A every time. I give everybody an A and say, let's make the environment interesting.
right.
I think the autodidact notion of information with what's going on now with the internet and so on is leading to the kind of idea of education as I was thinking of it then. Why don't we have a really interesting environment rather than the authority of all these professors with their ego trips being forced upon the students in order for they get a certificate to maybe make some money? Which is a disgusting kind of thing that is the principal means in which the society is held together now and ought to be questioned.
in any case,
but that would have been about 69, 70 that it got started.
all right. Well, we're starting to get the high sign in, and we
got a couple of minutes left, apparently.
We've got a couple of minutes left, but and I do want to move on to the subject. So you're in our next segment.
Yeah,
we'll kind of get closer. But I just wanted to kind of just go over with you. Because, like I said, I've been my privilege to be your guest a couple of times, but
yeah.
I really didn't know, that much about your background vis-a-vis, the way, producing your own.
Well,
show.
that's my own. I didn't mean to get personal, but
no, I did.
Yeah.
In any case, we've got running out of time. My guest has been Harold Channer.
I think we still got about another minute and a half. We could say something.
That's all right. I want to go out with a flourish.
You're going to go out with a flourish?
May not happen. But,
hey, how about it? I'll give you a drum roll.
Thank you. You've been watching Brass Tacks. My guest has been Harold Channer. I've been your host, Dennis Horvitz. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
And say we're going to come back with more.
And we got more.
We got more. We're going to do more. This is the thing. We can keep talking because this is going to air for 28 minutes. We got another couple of minutes. We can add a little postscript.
It's always so hard for me because when I have a guest that's really shy and retiring,
yeah, I'm sorry about that. You can't drag anything out of them.
Yeah, I can't get anything out of it.
Anyway, that was it. So that was it. I think public access is really important. I think it ought to be given great recognition by the society in general. It's wonderful because you can make television, multimedia, and distribute. Do you see, Dennis, how good the program is now streamed in Flash? It can be seen everywhere in the world. What a jump in distribution!
But I think it goes back to something very basic, and that is that the people own the airwaves.
Well, the people here can make, let me just say, because it's financed through this franchising thing that the cable industry agrees to, it means people, citizens on the public part. Education is this, universities, city school system, and the government is Bloomberg and that. Those are normal dialectic, private sector, public sector.
Right.
But this is for the people, and they can come and they can make programming that is relevant to them, and they don't have to think at all about money.
Right. Well, that's
the kind of society I would like to have.
That's what I'm starting to. That's what I was trying to say is that on the idea that the people own the airwaves, that anybody should. It's another form of freedom.
Well, they have
speech.
access to it. Yeah, that's real free speech.
It's free speech.
Rather than it's not bought by some lobbying group or something like that.
Absolutely.
That holds in the straight
and anybody
society.
should be able to, and if they like, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. You take your chances. Just
okay, I think we ought to just say, I think we've come to the end now, what's going to be on there, so maybe we should collectively say we're coming back soon.